Hello friends, I'm Steve Sandford. You're watching the Dominion Report. Today's discussion is about Naomi Wolf and, as she published, the 10 Steps of Fascism. Now, before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the many people who have liked, subscribed, and commented on my videos. The response to this channel in just a few days has been tremendous. Thank you very much. On that note, a shout out to one of my early subscribers from Twin Falls, Idaho. This flag here is for you. Naomi Wolf is the author of a book called The End of America. In that book, which she published in 2007, she argues that the events of the early 2000s paralleled events in the early years of many other of history's dictatorships. She uses the terminology for these societies as closing societies, and she used that to describe Hitler's Germany, Mussolini's Italy, and Stalin's Russia, among others. Wolf identified the 10 steps that these societies followed in their descent into fascism, and we're going to go over them right now. The first one: invoke a terrifying internal and external enemy. So like perhaps caravans of people trying to come into your country, take your jobs, and eat your pets. Number 2, create secret prisons where torture takes place. Now this has already happened, and it's actually not secret. You know, Guantanamo Bay is well known as a place where the US government would question alleged terrorists. That particular facility has recently been converted to deal with immigrants who are detained and who are not accepted into the US, and also who are not turned away and sent back to their home country. Number 3, develop a thug or paramilitary force not answerable to citizens. Now, I'm not sure if the current activities of ICE, that's Immigration Customs Enforcement, who have been apprehending immigrants who are legally in the United States or legally attempting to enter the United States, and have been imprisoning them without due cause. Not sure if that fits into the category, but it sure seems like it does. I also know of another group, a non-government group, that has been waiting in the wings. They were told to stand back and stand by. Number 4, set up an internal surveillance system. Now, remember, this was published in 2007, and I think the world has changed a lot since then. You know, we could talk about Edward Snowden, but I think even beyond that, I think the systems are now in place, and I think we willingly participate in them. And I would categorize them as social media. Number 5, infiltrate and harass citizen groups. We know that the FBI scrutinized, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement. There are claims that members of the FBI instigated some of the violence that has been attributed to the Black Lives Matter movement. I haven't personally seen definitive evidence of this, but let's just say that if it turned out to be true, I wouldn't be surprised. I would also say too that, you know, online groups these days can and are easily infiltrated. Number 6, engage in arbitrary detention and release. Now, this is literally happening right now. We've seen this over the past week or two with numerous documented cases across the US. You know, for the moment, it seems to be targeting immigrants. Constitutionally, immigrants don't have as many rights as citizens. And of course, because there's been years of othering of those immigrants, much of the public comes to accept this. That public doesn't realize that once it's acceptable for immigrants to be detained without due process, then the next step is that it becomes okay for anyone to be detained without due process. Number 7, target key individuals. Now, there are dozens of examples of specific personality attacks and harassments against numerous people. Disingenuous rhetoric inspired someone to attack Nancy Pelosi, and who actually struck her husband with a hammer in their residence. That's just one example of many. And we don't yet know about anyone specifically who's been murdered. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there is a questionable death of a U.S. attorney in Virginia recently that has certainly raised some questions. Number 8, control of the press. Now, recently, one of the major media settled a lawsuit filed by Donald Trump and paid $15 million for a questionable defamation claim. Many analysts see it as capitulation. There's probably a whole story and maybe even a video to be done on this, but you can look it up. Other news outlets and journalists have certainly been targeted, have been vilified and harassed. And quite recently, there's been executive orders and even legislation has been introduced to suppress freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Number 9, cast dissent as treason. This has been completely standard operating procedure for the Trump administration. It's now been almost a decade that we've had this guy. Watch for this to ramp up beyond just rhetoric. Number 10, suspension of the rule of law. Well, I mean, for starters, how about attempted election subversion? What about executive orders that bypass Congress? Congress, who are supposed to make all decisions regarding the spending of money on things like federal employees or Department of Education, for example. How about ignoring court orders? That also falls into this category, just saying. So those are the 10 steps, according to Wolf. That's where we are right now. If you haven't already, check out my other recent video, the 14 characteristics of fascism. I'll put the link below, and I'll also put the link to Wolf's writing as well. In the meantime, stay calm, stay strong, and elbows up.